Stories of Ukraine. How many stories do I have that start out with when we were in Ukraine? Yeah, mission work has been one of the most important things that I've ever put my hand to and something that I'm most proud of. There's so many good stories that Alicia and I can share about our preparing, the very step of volunteering to do that kind of work, the amazing support of the people around you, the raw and hard decision that has to be made to give up your life, and also the raw and hard reality that you didn't really do that much. Even though God's mercy, He allowed you to associate yourself with some of the greatest people who have ever lived, the missionaries. And then you realize that your reward is going to be good enough if you just bring a cup of cold water to someone. So there's a lot of Ukraine stories that we have generated in the mission field, and occasionally I'll break off and tell you one of them here. So this one is called Literally in the Air. It's a long story of all the factors that brought us to this place, but we were 2.5 years into what we thought was going to be about a 5-year stretch in Ukraine. The people who supported us ended up surprising us with discontinuing their support. So we had gone to America to see our families for the holidays, and we thought we were going to go back to continue our work, but instead we were faced with the disappointing prospect of needing to pack up our things and to go back home. We were not so much as heartbroken as we were empty of all indications of what should happen next, because we had no idea. One of the most satisfying aspects of being in the mission field is purpose. Once you have left your home country to answer a call to be a missionary, whatever your work might be, whether evangelism, nonprofit work, preaching, teaching, or whatever, one thing's for sure, that your current status as missionary is completely God's idea. So when you wake up in the morning, you know why you are there. So when we were told that our time was up as half as early as we were expecting, we were just getting started good. We had just crossed that 2.5-year milestone, which essentially means we were just getting used to living in another culture. And we wanted to stay. Our supporters were basically a single organization, and we had not had any successful fundraising with any of our home churches or any of our friends. In other words, no one was supporting us except for the sending organization. So when they pulled the plug, our support was gone. So our work in the city that they had sent us to was not working out as anyone expected it to. So they were a bit disappointed, and so were we, as well as very discouraged. So we thought for a moment that this may have been the Lord's answer to our calls of distress during that real hard half a year that we'd spent. But we definitely wanted to stay in country, and we wanted to do some good work. We just didn't know what it was going to look like. So the flight back over to Europe was bittersweet. We had enjoyed the holidays with our families, but after Christmas, when we got the phone call that our time with that organization was expired, that they were going to pay for our trip back to get us over, to get our things and get us back to America, but then we were on our own. Our heads were in a spin. We didn't know what we were going to do. In the mid-2000s, we had cell phones and internet service, but once we got into the country, it just took us a few days to get back connected to our regular phones and voicemails and emails. Once we settled into Kiev, we got our tickets back to Sumy. We rode the train and then got back to our apartment, and that's when we started receiving all of our communications. When we were literally in the air, we'd missed several phone calls and emails from both Ukrainian and American people who had heard that we might be leaving the country, and they desperately were trying to get us to stay. It's really unbelievable, and I was touched, even when I was writing this, to be so blessed to know that God is always watching out for us, even when we don't know what's going on. We had no idea that a church in Western Ukraine heard about us leaving and wanted us to come to their congregation and do some teaching for an extended stay, which ended up being about 2.5 years. They were working with a church in Texas, and all of these people, we knew and loved them. And so our work that was a dark night of the soul, it turned into a redemptive beacon of light. And we didn't even know it until we started getting the phone calls and the emails and the messages. So what followed after that was Alicia and I sat down and wrote out a pro and con list. And to this day, we still wish all of our decisions were that easy, because the pro list was very long and it had God's providential hand written all over it. And the con list was just some silly stuff that were easily crossed out and were absolutely frivolous compared to the heavy pro side. So instead of packing our bags and leaving the country, we just packed our bags and moved across the country.